one sits in the front row.
We don't have alcohol.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you. We're streaming live, so if you're watching on YouTube, welcome in. Even when we're at a comedy club where lots of people say blue things, it's still, say it with me now, peace, love, and understanding. We're so grateful to all of you come. I normally start with jokes whenever I speak in public, but I'm gonna start serious. One of the miracles of two-way has been the community built. And we could do events like this anywhere in the country and we'd get a nice crowd. Maybe not the same average income as this group, but still a nice crowd. And it's incredible to have people who are from different ideological parts of America to gather in one place to listen to serious, long, sophisticated conversations. That's the bet we made and we've continued to make. And so we're so grateful to you all for being here. Now, I always like to know the audience a little bit, so I'm going to ask you to vote by show of hands. If you're uncomfortable voting in front of the others, you can close your eyes as you vote. Raise your hand if you voted for Donald Trump in the election. Raise your hand if you voted for Donald Trump. All right. Now that's in New York City, incredible. Hands down. Raise your hand if you think there are people in the room who voted for Donald Trump but didn't raise their hand. Yeah, a lot more people think that. I'm going to try to monitor the news as I always do during the program because stuff can happen. The SpaceX launch is about to take place. Something that happened just a few minutes ago. I'll just read verbatim here. President-elect Donald Trump has said he'll nominate Dr. Oz to lead the federal Medicare and Medicaid agency. That's not a joke, but many of you will find it humorous. Dr. Oz.
CMS.
Dr. Oz in charge of spending for healthcare for one of the largest programs in the federal government, because hosting a syndicated weekly show is about the same qualification as being the Fox weekend host. It's roughly the same. All right, guys, welcome. Thank you for joining. We're going to talk a little bit about stuff that's in the news. We're waiting to see if the rocket goes off, and we'll report on that. And then we are going to take your questions. As was said, there's a microphone right here. You're welcome to go to it. You can line up now if you're super aggressive. There's one couple that told me that two-way has saved their marriage. Eager to hear from them. More responsibility than I normally would like to take on, but nonetheless would be interested to know how that happened. But when we get the Q&A portion, you can go to the question. This is being streamed live. There are cameras all over the room. Not unlike being in Mar-a-Lago, everything you do can be seen and heard by the Chinese. So this morning we talked about the cabinet, and we talked about the prospect that Mr. Lutnick, who was trying to Dick Cheney himself into Treasury, was going to end up at Commerce. That was announced today. But that's...
Bravo, Mark.
I can't remember who reported me. But it was quickly followed by others. My question is, what do you know, Sean, about Treasury and NEC? What is the status of those two slots?
Nothing. I don't have that. I mean, I think, as we said earlier, education seems pretty much guaranteed to Linda if she wants it, Linda McMahon at this point. The NEC Treasury bout is still ongoing. Speaking of WWE, I think that's where that is right now.
Dan, any ideas?
No, they continue to not update me from the Trump White House.
We're going to get you on the list.
Yes, I know Nancy Pelosi has ideas, but I don't think they want them right now.
All right. I want to read you then something of interest to me, which is, does it get any more MAGA than Kimberly Guilfoyle? No. Okay? Here's what she tweeted today. Message to DC Republicans. You're in power because of President Trump. There's a MAGA mandate. No more business as usual. So, in this face-off between Senate Republicans and MAGA, particularly as it comes for the first several weeks now, it's going to be about confirmation, who will win? The swampy establishment Republicans or MAGA?
Oh, MAGA wins every day of the week.
Yeah,
I mean,
So you guys still think all 5 confirmations?
Yeah,
No, I do not.
No.
And so Dan's like, well, MAGA wins a little. You have to, until there's a reason they win. Right now, there's still not a reason to take anyone down.
I still continue to think that, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Hegseth is going to be a problem because you have 2 wars going on. You know, the stuff in Ukraine is getting even more serious now. And I continue to say his one qualification seems to be that he was a Fox News host, and he works with veterans, which is very admirable, but he's not trying to be the head of Veterans Affairs. And I think there are some Republicans, it's all fun and games except for at DOD. And I don't think the Democrats are going to take him down. I think there will be some in his own party, and the nomination gods get one.
I don't know. I mean, look, the defense industrial complex may try to go after him, but he's a recipient of the Bronze Star twice, a veteran of Gitmo, Afghanistan, Iraq. You can't undermine his military service and his sacrifice. So they're going to have to come at it very differently, which is why you've now seen talk about the tattoos that he has as opposed to his qualifications. I don't think that they're going to get him on that. They're going to have to find something else if they're going to take him down.
Show of hands again. You don't need to close your eyes. Who likes when I put Sean on the spot? Who likes that part of the show? Okay. Sean.
Not Sean.
Take away his Fox News hosting credentials. A guy with his lack of record of management, of his record in the military, it seems to me he wouldn't even be close to considered for the job.
Yeah, but okay, and as I said on the show the other day, take away Dennis McDonough being White House Chief of Staff, and what business does he have running the VA right now? The guy is never served, he's never given a home mortgage or had VA health care. So he has no expertise in the jobs that the VA performs. He's never served, and yet no one had a problem with that. Pete Buttigieg oversaw 63 buses in South Dakota, South Bend, Indiana, and suddenly everyone goes, yeah, that guy's qualified.
You're thinking they're not qualified doesn't make Hegseth qualified.
No, I get it, but if we're going to judge Pete on a standard, at least the guy served in the military, which is more, I mean, Mayor Pete probably has never taken a bus, and yet we're going to make him the secretary. So I think the problem is suddenly qualifications matter, and if you're going to say they matter, you know that it's not just that Pete Hegseth yes, he came to Providence because of his appearances on Fox, but he's written books on the military. He's talked about the reform that's needed, the problems that exist right now in DEI training and lack of focus on mission readiness. So I think the people who have a problem with Pete Hegseth are largely people who are afraid about military contracting. Well, do you guys work for Raytheon or something? You gotta hope there's an exit back here.
I just think that I get the not doing business as usual with every other department, and that's why I think if you're going to sacrifice kind of Gates or Hegseth, DOJ is one where there's just more anger and frustration. But I go back to there are two wars going on, and I just think to put someone in charge who's going to go after DEI, I don't know if that's, again, I think Republicans, some of them will say, I don't know.
Look, I sat in the briefings with Trump in the Situation Room, in the tank over in the Pentagon. He is tired of getting status quo reports from the Pentagon and saying, well, we'll just do this, but maybe a little less or a little more. He wants real substantial change, and Hegseth is willing to bring it. That's the bottom line, and I respectfully think that we're undermining Pete's service to the country when we talk about, all he wants to do is DEI. He understands the reforms that are needed and the challenges that we face. He may not be the most qualified because he didn't rise to a flag level, but he has served all over. I mean, I told this story before, I think, when President Trump at one point wanted to understand Afghanistan, he brought in a ton of the enlisted soldiers and sailors and sat them around the Roosevelt Room and said, tell me about the mission that we're performing. Do you think that we're accomplishing it? Did you feel? He wanted to know from the ground what was happening. Pete's been on the ground in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Gitmo. He understands what's happening. Now, you may disagree with whether or not that's the right change that we need or the right perspective, but I will tell you, not every flag officer has a full sense of what's going on the ground. And maybe it's time that we had a different view of what we needed to be doing and focusing on.
All right, so
these are all the people who don't work for Raytheon.
I've been multitasking while I've been listening extremely closely to everything Sean and Dan have said. I'm watching cable news here. Little quiz for everybody.
We're glad we're entertaining you.
Little quiz. Which network during the successful launch of SpaceX, whatever it is, 6, was showing former CIA Director John Brennan talking about whether Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset? Was it A, Fox News Channel, or B, MSNBC?
What was B?
And I'll tell you, CNN is showing the launch in a very boosterish way, and Fox is basically staying on the buddy picture of Elon and Trump in a tent. Elon is wearing a black T-shirt, a little too tight for my taste, and Donald Trump is wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat at the launch. So that's your live update for the news.
Shocker.
We're going to go to your questions soon, so if you'd like to ask a question, please go to the mic, because tonight's really more about getting questions from you all. You can ask about anything you want. You can ask about the details of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, or what Sean knows about Melania and Donald Trump's marriage. Whichever you prefer, either is fine with us. Our only rule during the Q&A, and the three of us feel pretty strongly about this, your questions have to be in the form of true, false. So feel free to line up, but only true, false. Last question for you guys is about the Democrats. Chuck Schumer, put him on a milk carton. Normally the guy loves to talk to the press, not seen him. What do you think's going on there, Dan?
Yeah, Dan.
Let me go back to nominations. Schumer tends to want to know where his caucus is. And, you know, I think they are probably trying to figure out, he's trying to figure out the folks who are going to be up in 2026, where are they? Like, how are they thinking about the next couple of months? You know, where do they want to try to cooperate with Trump? I mean, I'd be really surprised. You know, one of the reasons that a lot of Senate Democrats love Schumer is he listens. He is always on the phone, always calling people, every hour of the day. What's happening in your state? What do you need? What can I do for you? And it's why, you know, the Claire McCaskills of the world would run through a brick wall for Chuck Schumer. Like, he socializes with them. He's constantly talking to them. So my bet is he is just trying to figure out what the land looks like for him right now. And he's got a great relationship with Hakeem Jeffries. And I think he's probably, by the time they come back in January, he will have a plan for when they're in the minority. What issues are they going to work with Trump on, and where are they going to draw their lines?
I've shown an enormous amount of patience and maturity by not having Sean do his Trump imitation until 12 minutes in. Sean, how do you think Donald Trump is thinking about Schumer and Jeffries and opposition from Democrats on the Hill?
I don't even know who this Chuck Schumer is. I used to donate to his campaign. He'd come in and beg like a dog. And then I said, "Get out, Chuck. Chuck wagon, leave." And now we're in charge, and I won't even have to talk to him.
I won't say keep your day job, I'll say keep your morning job. Is there anybody at the mic?
Yes.
There are. I can't
It's out
see
the
'cause of bright lights. Did you know that Prince has played on this stage? Fun fact. And now Dan Turrentine. Sir, question.
Yes, so I actually have a YouTube channel that's called Mike Impressions and Reviews, and that actually was a very good impression, Sean.
Thank you. That means a lot from you.
Wait till you hear his Adam Schiff. Also very good.
And obviously I voted for Kamala Harris, you can tell right now. So the things, I have two questions. The first question has to do with the 2024 election, and then the second question has to do with the 2028 election.
Brilliant outline of your questions. Now do the questions.
Okay, so the thing is I noticed is I think a lot of voters focus on the president as like the big main event, and they don't focus on all the other races on their ballot. So I've been looking at the results, and I've been noticing a big difference between president and Senate. And why I think, you know, with Trump, he was comfortable as far as winning a lot of these swing states, but for the senators, it wasn't. And I think the two main issues is voters leaving their ballot blank for senator and the lower races, and also voting for third parties. So I have some numbers here. So for New York, 57,000 voters left president blank, but 330,000 voters left senator blank. And now, as far as the swing states, when it comes to, you know, the blank voting, there's a lot of that in the swing states. But the issue also is with third parties, that voters were more likely to vote for a third-party candidate for Senate compared to president. So I'll just run through some quick numbers. So for Pennsylvania, for the president, third party got 34,000 votes. But in Pennsylvania, for the third party for Senate, 90,000 votes, 67,000.
Let's stipulate you're more handsome Nate Silver.
Okay.
And you've got the data. What's your question number one on that stuff?
Okay, so my question is, what can we do as far as with the down ballot and trying to educate more voters that not just focus on president, to focus on the Senate, the state legislature, the Congress,
Great.
fill out everything.
We got,
also, if we do some research, why in a lot of the swing states, voters were more willing to vote for the third party candidate for Senate compared to third party for president.
that's more a doctoral dissertation than a true-false question, but these guys will handle it. What's your second question?
Okay, the second question has to do with the 2028 election. So I wanted to have my Democrat strategist hat. I wanted to be like Dan. And I was thinking, if you're the Democrats, What's the smartest thing you could do? Who's the smartest candidate that can be the Democratic nominee in 2028? How can you beat the Republicans at their own game? And I thought about it. You know what they should do? They should have a billionaire businessman who is a reality TV show host. That's right, Mark Cuban, 2028. I think there's a lot of positives, and I think he'd be a dangerous candidate for the Democrats. I want to know your opinion on Mark Cuban.
Thank you very much. I know Mark Cuban agrees with you, but let's see what these guys think. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the question.
I appreciate it. Mike, impressions and reviews, thank you so much. The show is great.
Thank you. All right, let's do the questions in order, not reverse order, as so politicians like to do. Guys, what are your theories about down ballot? Why Trump did better in the battlegrounds than the Senate Republican candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a couple people here earlier about this. I think one of the great questions is, you know, Trump is clearly an amazing political athlete. I'm not sure that, you know, we'll ever see somebody quite like him. What happens to the movement? I mean, can this be inherited by another candidate? Can turnout remain the way it is? I mean, one of Trump's great strengths is he has brought a lot of new people out, and now this election cycle, he peeled Democrats off. And is it transferable? I mean, we didn't see it quite in 2022. We didn't quite see it in 2018. You know, does J.D. Vance potentially, or Ron DeSantis, or whomever, you know, is next, are they able to keep this going? Because, as you say, the track record is it's Trump and only Trump.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we've seen that during his time in office. His endorsement matters in a primary, but beyond that, people don't get that. They feel like Donald Trump is their champion. He's getting things done for them. And I don't think they feel the same about other candidates. I mean, look, you're wearing a Make America Great hat again. I think you're not wearing a Dave McCormick hat, although I'm sure I can get Dave to get you one. But the point is that he inspired a bunch of people to go out and fight for him. I don't know that was the case. And to Dan's point, I think some people felt conflicted. Like, I want to fight for Trump. He's going to make change. But I like, you know, my incumbent senator for X, Y, and Z reasons. So that there's a different dynamic there. And then the third parties are a whole separate can of worms, because people who vote for third parties have a variety of reasons why they do that. Sometimes because they believe in them. Sometimes they just want to go through the exercise of casting a ballot but don't want to vote for one of the two. But I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump truly is a unique candidate. And so people went out to vote for him, and then down ballot, you know, sort of left to fight for themselves.
On your second question, I'll take it first. In Staten Island, we have an expression, sui generis. It means very generous. No, it means one of a kind. And all these billionaires or celebrities who think what Donald Trump did was a function of being a celebrity are, I'd say, 8% correct. He brought so much to it, which I've talked about at great length and written about. It's not easy to run for president. And somebody like Mark Cuban, who demonstrated in the final days of the campaign, not just a lack of message discipline, but lack of understanding of the news cycle. I think it's easy to point to celebrities and billionaires and say they could do what Trump did. I don't believe I see anybody out there, including Mark Cuban, who could do it.
Yeah, look, there's a reason Donald Trump was the first person that hasn't been a general or an elected official. It's like a shooting star. It doesn't happen that often. Although I didn't take astronomy, so maybe shooting stars happen more often. But the bottom line is, so that's unique. Number two, when people say the Republicans should nominate the Democrats, with all due respect, it gives the parties way too much credit. They don't. The party. This isn't, you know, the 1960s anymore with smoke-filled rooms. They don't have that power. So if Cuban wants to run, and we've seen these before, especially with billionaires, they have this sense of that they know the system better, that they've got an ego that sometimes gets in the way. Politics is retail, and that's something that Trump's uniqueness, because he is the businesses that he was in, he understood people. He interacted with blue-collar workers, and he could speak their language. And so it's not that Mark can't do that, but I think that too often billionaires and really rich people think that they're just really smart, therefore they'll get elected, and they don't understand the nuts and bolts of politics.
Yeah, and I don't know who the next candidate will be, and I think I shouldn't. I mean, I think candidates are not going to go out and road test messages, and if it were 2013, I don't think anybody would say, I mean, take Donald Trump out of it. The winning message, when you guys, after you did your autopsy, is going to be to crack down on illegal immigration, to get out of the wars, to put tariffs up on trade. There's a reason that Rupert Murdoch, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan were all horrified at Donald Trump's initial message. But Trump has an amazing street sense, and he understood where people were. He took his message to them. He did not apologize when he was attacked, and he did it the old-fashioned way. Like, he stormed the gates, bad, pun. He marched into Washington, and he took over, and, look at what just happened. So I don't know who the next Democrat will be. I don't know what our message will be, but I'm okay with that. And I, am excited to see who steps forward, and who the heck am I to say what should or should not be said?
So right on cue on the 5 currently, they've got a poll they're showing from Echelon Insights. You guys know that outfit? Reputable polling firm. They polled Democrats. Who should your candidate be in 2028, Democrats? I'll start from the bottom. Governor Walz, 6%. Pete Buttigieg, 6%. Governor Shapiro, 7%. Gavin Newsom, 8%. Ready?
Hillary. Let's go, Hillary.
Arguably one of the worst presidential candidates we've seen, by some people's estimation. The Veep, 41%. 41%. Dan, how do you feel about that? 41%. That's a landslide.
Let's just stop and pray for a minute.
I think there has to be some news on Matt Gaetz we need to do.
I'll do an X search on Matt Gaetz. All right, next question, please.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Charles Chicalo, pleasure to be here.
Welcome in.
Can I say in the co-host?
Absolutely.
All right. Question for Sean. You said MAGA's going to win the confirmation. MAGA's going to win confirmations all the way. How can a vulnerable swing stater like McCormick actually come back to the constituents and say, yeah, I'm going to vote these 5 in and expect to win re-election when it's so close? Then, when Democrats, or when any party loses an election, it causes reflection. As a centrist, it worries me that Democrats will reflect and embrace the squad even tighter. Do you see that happening?
Great 2 questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the question.
We're 6 years away from McCormick facing re-election, so he's got 6 years. Number 2, you can't lose your base in an election. That's the most fundamental thing. And if you were to go against that, you would face a primary and you wouldn't be worried so much about the general. So I think Dave McCormick has 6 years. He focuses on the base, and then he worries about the general after that. But you have to avoid the primary first and foremost.
Yeah, I was talking about like people, Republicans in swing states like McCormick.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
How can you
same thing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the only one that's going to might get a pass is Collins or Murkowski, but they've already cast their lot.
Befitting a startup, could you hand your mic to Dan, please? Dan, use that mic. Thank you very much.
Typical Democrat.
Yes, exactly. Everything's breaking down these days. I think that, the party seems to not be as divided post-election here that they need to reevaluate what I'm just going to call the woke issues. If you follow AOC or some of the more progressive elements of the party, like on X, let's say, you don't see, we have to protect transgender athletes. What you see is, we're going to fight for abortion rights. Okay, that's pretty safe ground. Where you're seeing snipping from the 2 wings is on economic policy. And that's where it's an interesting question, because I think the party has lost the RFK vote, right? The number of people who come on the show, and there are probably some here, who are Democrats and left the party in immense frustration to go to RFK. How many Bernie Sanders voters, I know there's one here, I forget the gentleman, yeah, there you are, who famously came on and said he was going to vote for Trump, who, yes, Bernie very quickly told us, like, the party doesn't speak for the working class. And then you have the moderates who are going to say the party's lost its mind on some of the more progressive elements. That fight needs to occur. And I think winning candidates find a way to bridge the gap. Donald Trump has Wall Street loving him and blue-collar voters loving him. I look forward to seeing him try to satisfy everybody, right? Every politician tries it. But the party needs to have this fight, and candidates need to put
new ideas forward on the issues of the day. And it will be messy. It should be messy. And we'll come out of it, hopefully, with a good message.
All right, first quiz question of the night, all based on X. I'm going to read a quote to you from a Democratic senator. If you know who it is, shout it out. This Democratic senator commented tonight on whether he would support Dr. Oz to head CMS, running Medicare and Medicaid. Here we go. I'm not going to do an imitation. No hard feelings or anything. I'd have a beer with the dude. Whatever. That's the game.
John Vetter. That was
Is
not
it
a
the
no.
syntax? What made it so obvious? Some combination of word choice and syntax. I think whatever and the dude was probably the giveaway.
Yeah, but
All right, well done. Bravo.
but Fetterman said about, who was it, like hell no right away. And he didn't say no. It's interesting.
All right. Bernie Moreno, Senator-elect from Ohio. I may have missed the confirmation hearings and the very thoughtful advise and consent. He announced tonight he's supporting Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, and Bobby Kennedy for confirmation. Well done.
Not Kristi Noem?
Not Kristi Noem. Way to take the job seriously. Next question.
Hi, I'm Constantine.
Welcome.
Hello.
I voted here in New York. I voted Libertarian, but I dislike Trump a little less than I dislike Kamala. Mainly due to
Neither of them will be pleased to hear that.
mainly due to foreign policy. It seems to me the Democrats didn't do very well on that front the past 4 years. Two major wars started and escalated, and it seemed to me maybe Trump would be able to do something better on that front. Since he seems to be more prone to negotiate. But it also seems to me that nominations he speaks are quite inconsistent. I don't know too many things about him, but some of them seem a little hawkish, and some others seem a little more genuinely want to de-escalate things. So
Let me say about Matt Gaetz. If you were at the airport and you need to use the men's room, would you say to him, would you watch my luggage?
I don't think
No. Okay. Not a good sign.
so my question is to Sean and Mark. Which of the, with that inconsistency, which of the two do you think is going to prevail? The more hawkish or the more de-escalation?
Great question. Thank you very much for coming and for the question. Dan first, maybe Sean, and please share the mic.
I thought he asked you to. I think he's actually more dovish. I think it's one of the great misunderstandings of Trump is I think he talks really tough because he's a New Yorker and being the dominant alpha male and kind of a bully is his MO. I don't say that to be snarky, like it's good politics. I don't think he's very comfortable with war. I don't think he would be very comfortable if the country got, if he could drop the bomb and it was over in 24 hours and he could come on cable news the next day and be like, we won. But if it got messy and Americans were dying and he had to go to Dover Air Force Base and greet parents with coffins, he doesn't seem comfortable with that. And I think that's, it's an open question. So, you could read that two ways, right? That he will seek peace. He will be very hesitant to go to war and think that's probably good for, for the country. But if push came to shove, I'm curious.
I mean, look, I dealt with him enough that I know that at the end of the day, he does not want to see people hurt or injured, especially women and children. I mentioned that on the earlier program about the interaction that we had with respect to Syria. He has no problem with the bombing aspect, but he does want to minimize human casualty. So war is not, he talks tough, but at the end of the day, when you're president, there's a bit, I've been in the room with him when he has to console the spouses, and it is a heart-wrenching experience to go through and even sit in the room for. He takes that very seriously. He understands the consequences of decisions because that's how you get briefed. When they brief you, they tell you, this is what we expect as a battle damage assessment. Like, this is what we expect. I sat in the Situation Room when we watched bombing, and that was his number one concern. Are there civilians being killed? What's happening? So I think he wants to project toughness. He wants deals, but he also wants to minimize human casualty.
I'm a little busy. Give me a moment.
All right, next question.
So, a few things. I've never uttered these words in the context of political coverage, but according to the Washington Post, SpaceX aborts Starship booster grab. Whatever that means. CNN is now reporting that Linda McMahon will be named Education Secretary. Sean, where did you first hear that?
From me.
From you?
From me.
Okay.
On the morning meeting.
Yeah. Next question, please.
Oh, well, yeah.
Hello, Mark from Long Island. Hi, Mark. Hi, Sean.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my question would be, we're making a lot of big issues about the number one that Donald Trump is choosing as heading these departments. How important is the number two? Because
Very.
From what I understand, Lisa Monaco is a very powerful person in the Justice Department.
Yeah.
Who's actually running the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So we're so focused on Dr. Oz or on Gates, but I would be, the number two, they're not really confirmed by the
Yes,
Senate?
they are.
They are confirmed. They're always super important. They're very important in this administration. And some of the people who have asked the question, some of these nominees seem, at a minimum, to lack management experience. They're very focused on the number twos. They're very focused on making sure that the secretary designates are aware that they're going to have strong number twos. In some cases, primarily for management, which is often what the number twos do. In most departments, they have a major management role of the department. But in addition, in some cases, to accommodate other resume and experience weaknesses of the nominees.
Yeah, so at DOJ in particular, it's called the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, very powerful position. DOD, the deputy there, is supposed to, by statute, be a controller, an accountant. There's very specific writing about what the deputy, now they do grant waivers for that, but those are very important positions. And what you've seen in this particular iteration is there's a lot of people who felt like they were qualified or wanted to be the secretary or the number one, and are being told, hey, you get to be number two, and they're saying, no bueno. I don't want to, I'm not going to be the doer and do all the work while so-and-so goes out and gets all the credit or does all the TV. So you're actually, it's a really interesting dynamic this time because the normal number twos are, in many cases, were probably ripe to be number ones and are being asked in some cases to be the number two and saying, this isn't, I did all the legwork for the last 40 years. I've been doing all these policy papers getting ready, and I'm not just going to sit back and be the number two that gets, relegated the duties when you come back from the White House, like, hey, here's our to-do list and here's what I took credit for.
Right, so if Sean had this, if Trump had to swap out, let's say Matt Gaetz, and put in somebody else, he probably already has in mind who his number two is going to be regardless, right?
Yeah, but the number two doesn't have to, yes and no. The number two might stay number two, and you're going to draft a new number one. Depending on the situation, but in many cases, a lot of times the number two doesn't necessarily fleet up, right? So it's going to depend on the situation, but especially this early in the administration, my guess is if your number one falls off, you're going to get a new one. You're not just going to pull the number two up.
In most cases. Dan?
Yeah, absolutely, those number twos are powerful. And, it's like in the Senate or the House, the chief of staff can be the one who knows where the bodies are buried. They oversee the process. Stephen Miller was probably the most influential person to some extent because he knew the law, and in some instances, he wrote the law, and he knew exactly how to do stuff. And those are the most effective people. Some people like to be not in front of the camera, not known. They want to just toil and get stuff done. Others love the limelight. And so, yeah, the number twos and threes, huge positions.
So is the media too focused on who the number one?
Sure, because it's sexier to talk. First off, they're confirmed. Two, they get to sit around the table with the president and go to cabinet, meetings. But the people behind the scenes are the ones who actually know how to get stuff done.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that mic working, Noah?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. Next person, congratulations. You're going to get to be on stage at the Comedy Cellar. Come here. Yeah.
Hey, come on up.
Come here. All right. You know any jokes? I can give you one. No.
A Democrat and a Republican walk into a comedy.
Yeah, that's right.
Ready? Here, you hold the mic.
Okay, God.
No secrets.
A raisin, a nut, and an oat walk into a bar.
Oh, boy.
And they order some drinks. And the bartender says, "What do you think this is, a granola bar?" I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, so I want to say thank you.
You're here all week.
I take tips, not taxed.
Next week she's in Shuffles and Dayton.
No, anyway, no, I love your guys' show because I'm very involved in multiple communities that are trying to actually bring people together to talk who have different points of view. I have one called Solid Ground. I have another one, The Unspeakeasy, which is how I learned about this. It's a group of women, heterodox women speaking. And I'm involved with Braver Angels that brings reds and blues together to understand each other. So I want to ask you guys, because in this election, I think it's been the most divisive we've really ever seen, at least in my lifetime. And do you think that on Dems, Republicans, and the media, do you think they're going to ratchet things down? Do you think people have had it, or do they think they still need to kind of ramp stuff up in order to get ratings, to get clicks, to get the algorithm going?
So basically, you're asking about Joe and me.
Well, no, I know they're doing something, but I'm
Okay.
just curious, and you're
Thank
doing
you.
something,
Yeah.
people copy it.
Great question. Thank you. Dan.
I think the Democrats will tone it down a little because Trump thumped them. I think if Harris had won the popular vote, and let's say, Pennsylvania was 15,000 votes, right? I think Democrats would say, oh my God, like the majority of the country is with us. It was such a tiny fraction, like we're just not going to give an inch and basically make his life miserable, and then he's gone in 4 years. I think the fact that Trump made inroads in every single demographic and almost every geographic center of this country, you can't, if you're a Democrat, look at it and say, yep, Hitler and fascist is the winning message, like, let's just double down on that. Like, I think you have to say, and I'm happy that this is beginning to happen, why is he so popular? What is so appealing? And how can we either co-opt or reverse this trend? So I think on the Democratic side, the professional class, members of Congress, are going to tone it down. The industrial complex, their businesses, there is an incentive to fundraise, to get ratings. You can make a lot of money in outrage on both sides. And so there will always be those who choose that path.
Yeah, I literally wrote. So first of all, the answer is I don't know. I think to Dan's point, Democrats might tone it down a little until Trump does something, and then if the mass deportation start, it becomes, that's when we're going to see it all wretched up. I wrote a whole piece in my newsletter about this today, that in 2016 when we won, it felt like we won, but it was immediately discredited. It was Russia's fault. You didn't win the popular vote, etc. This time, the weight of that victory, popular vote, 312 electoral votes, gains with blacks, Hispanics, with women, young men in particular, like it made it so much New York. It made it so much more hard for the left to demonize the win. So I think they have to kind of right now. But it's interesting because I ask a lot of folks, what's the tone that we should take? And it's a mixed bag. There are some folks that want to pounce and say, we're finally able to be loud and vocal about our victory. And there are others that want to be a little bit more welcoming. I think the problem in Washington consistently is it's tit for tat. So, you guys took away this nomination, we're going to get it back this time. You guys did this, you changed the filibuster, we're going to do it even more. So every time something happens, the other side feels like when they're back in power, they have to one-up it. And no one wants to be the one to say, well, we'll just stop here. Because they also think there's no way the other side will not go back at it when they get back in power. So I think we might be at a pause because of the holidays a little, but come January.
Actually, there's one thing I also want to add to Sean's point. I can't remember a candidate that has won a race in the last decade on the message of I compromise and find ways to work with the other side. If you cut a deal, I think it was Reagan had the famous saying, like, I'll take 60% and I'll fight for the other 40% over the rest of history. Now, if you get 85 or 90%, the attack is you cut and run on the last 10%. And in primaries and even in the general election, the most conservative or the most progressive, the strongest fighter for our values wins. At some point, that tide will turn, and somebody will win on a message of compromise and working with the other party.
That dynamic has changed. I mean, I remember my first race in Connecticut, 2nd District, and we talked about working across the aisle. If you said that now, you'd get crushed. And the dynamic in politics has just changed. And to Dan's point, outrage sells. It's how you raise money. It's how you get on cable TV.
All right, next quiz question. Who can tell me the single word spoken by famous French mime Marcel Marceau in the Mel Brooks classic film Silent Movie? Anybody know? Anybody know? No, incredible. It's the same thing that Donald Trump just answered when the pool asked him if he was reconsidering his nomination of Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. No. Trump said it without the N at the end of the word, but it's the same. Next person, come on up. Oh, does that mic work, Noah? No. No, come on up. Bring that mic. Yeah, it's a big night for no. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Sorry, we just want to make sure everybody can hear you. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me. So I,
What's your name?
Onyx. Onyx, yeah.
Two-way hero.
Yeah. So I've sort of been watching some of the rhetoric around some of Trump's nominations, and one of the things I noticed this weekend, for example, was when there was pushback about the fact that he has the right to make his nominations. And for instance, with Matt Gaetz, there's the issue of the Russian hawks. The Justice Department needs to be reformed, and all the stuff they did to Trump, and not only Trump, Republicans. I mean, I come from a place where almost like a banana republic, where there's no real rule of law. And I felt within the last 4 years that this.
Part of New Jersey are you from?
But I felt within the last 4 years that America was turning into something that I couldn't believe. There was just, everything was so politicized, and even the judges were making decisions based on politics and not the rule of law. So I'm sort of wondering, are the Democrats expecting us to sort of paper over that and have kumbaya and forget all the stuff they did? Because I don't think it's realistic. So. And then I have another question. So I'm just wondering how they're going to deal with it. And then the other question is that, what do you think the policy on crypto is going to be in Trump's? Because I know he said he was going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So I'm really interested in whether he's actually going to do that or what the policy is. If you have any idea.
On the second one, if you come back here on January 21st, I suggest you bring crypto, because it's all they'll be taking. Sean first, why do you take them both? Democrats acknowledging perhaps excess?
Yeah, I think that's why the picks are what they are. They look at what has happened in these areas, right? I mean, and said, okay, we're going to bring people in each of these areas, this particular DOJ, DOD, and the intel community. That's where the real focus is, because of the abuses that people on the right have seen. They're saying, great, then let's go in, shake things up, business as usual is over. But that's why these people, when they say that Trump is picking loyal people, they're missing the broader point. It's not just loyalty. It's not like someone's going to come in and just be loyal to him, that they've agreed they get what needs to happen. Loyalty's part of it. But at the end of the day, it's about a mindset that says, are you willing to come in, break some glass, change business as usual, especially in those key areas, DOJ, Intel, DOD. That's what's going to happen. And I think you're going to see RFK do that, especially in the pharma, NIH, CDC area as well.
Check.
So that's why it's happening. On the crypto front, all I'll say is I think that he has sort of cast his lot on this. You saw him over the campaign. So there's going to be some kind of crypto reform, whether it's accepting it as a digital currency. But if he fires Powell, then I think the next Fed chair is going to come in with some kind of commitment on crypto.
Dan.
Yeah, I'm not sure about crypto, so I don't have much to say other than I think it's not going to go away. So the pace at which it evolves and is regulated will be interesting to see. On the lawfare, this is hard for Democrats because I think they look at Trump and they think that he has broken the law in so many instances that politically they were like, let's go after all of them and see what sticks. And okay, on some level, no one is above the law. On the other hand, some of what they went after, they only did because he was running for president. So, and I can say that. The flip side is not all of, in my opinion, what happened on January 6th and what happened in Georgia was deserving. Now, they took forever to do it. And the reality becomes that once the campaign starts, you just can't keep moving forward because it looks like you're interfering in the election. And so, the fact that they went after a business deal and a relationship with a porn star, like, I get it. John Edwards went down because he didn't disclose an affair he had and the campaign payments. But they did go after him across the board with the idea that we're going to get him and stop him. And that is not good. So do I think that some Democrats right now are sweating? They are. And I hope that it's tough talk. Maybe they sweat a little bit, but everyone kind of stands down. But I get the Republican outrage. Like the fact that he didn't put all the papers back when he left the White House, I get it. But like, you don't go after someone like the way they did. And I just think that was to get in his face, rough him up, and defeat him. But again, I want to be clear. I think what the January 6th inquiry and trying to find votes in Georgia, to me, were legitimate lines to question if he was breaking the law. But they waited too long.
You want to respond? Is your name on the marquee outside? Come on, sure.
So my thing is, it wasn't just Trump, right? So let's see the January 6th issue, right? So they went after these people, and I would never do that, but they went after these people that went into the Capitol. The Democrats have done even worse, and they didn't go after them. So the problem is you have a two-tiered system of justice, which it depends on. It's not that, if you had gone, and part of the thing is that these people probably thought, okay, they didn't do anything to the Democrats when they did things like this. They had riots, they burned down stuff, and they didn't do anything to them, so it's okay for me to do it. And then they went after them with flipsy charges. And the most annoying thing is that they didn't do it to another group. It's like, justice was not equal in this case. Not only, even the Georgia one, the Democrats have done something similar. And even if what he did was wrong, we can argue that, but they didn't go after the Democrats. So that's where the problem lies. We cannot have two systems of justice in this country, or we will become a banana republic.
All I'll say is, despite the rise of MAGA in Manhattan, I'm very glad regarding your safety for peace, love, and understanding, because I heard some murmurs on this side of the room. Thank you for that. Is anybody have a question, a Harris voter? Because once again, we're having our normal problem. Come on up, please. Come on.
Yay!
Here we go. Thank you for coming.
All right, ask away. I actually wrote my notes when I was in line.
Well done.
So, full disclosure, I voted a straight Democratic ticket in this election, but I consider myself a very middle-of-the-road voter, regularly choosing country over party. But as a woman, as a victim of sexual assault, and as a member of the LGBT community, how am I supposed to make peace with Project 2025? And I just put together a few statistics that I'd like to talk to you about, because I want I want to understand, because I don't want discourse. I want to understand how I can make peace with this and move forward with the next 4 years of my life, because the decision has been made. So I want to make the best of that. But per the Advocate, Project 2025's mandate for leadership is a 900-page document that for LGBT Americans primarily ends our protections, but also calls for erasure of LGBT inclusive language throughout federal agencies, such as terms sexual orientation, gender identity, diversity, equity, inclusion, and gender equality. The document states that they would dismantle the Affordable Care Act's protections against sex discrimination in healthcare. They would reverse the 2024 Title IX rule, depriving LGBT students of non-discrimination protections in K-12, colleges, and universities that get federal funding. It would gut LGBT workplace discrimination protections under Title VII, limiting them to just hiring and firing decisions. Furthermore, it calls for programs that promote families comprised of a married mother, father, and their children, and treats other families as threats to a healthy society. They'd make it easier for LGBT people to be turned away or discriminated against, including weaponizing and contorting religious refusals and free speech rights. I am well aware that the fact that I, as a straight presenting woman, I mean, did any of you think I was gay? Surprise! I am more fortunate than most in my community. But I am at a complete loss, even as a middle-of-the-road voter. So many people that I love and care about dearly don't have the luxury. They call what I am, they call me a ninja, because I can choose when I reveal it and when I don't. And so many people don't have that luxury when they're completely, LGBT presenting. How am I supposed to make peace with things that are going to potentially damage me and people I love and put us at risk? I want to make peace with it, but how do I do it?
First of all, very brave for you to come up and do that. And I'm going to take the liberty of speaking for everybody in the room, regardless of who they voted for, who say we all heard the emotion in your voice and the concern in your voice, not just for yourself and not just for your community, but for the country. And we're going to address it in great length, but thank you for doing that. So, first of all, Donald Trump doesn't support Project 2025. There are parts of it that agree with what he supports, but you shouldn't be concerned that everything in Project 2025 is either part of his agenda or something that he'll try to pass. And I believe, based on talking to him about these issues for a long time, and Sean will address this with more authority, that he's a big believer in equal rights and equal protection, and has many friends who are part of your community, and understands the importance of both policy and symbolism. So I'm not telling you not to be worried at all, but I'm telling you, you don't need to be as concerned, I think, as your question suggests, and as the list you read suggested, okay? That's my start. I'll turn it to Sean and then Dan to address it as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, and I'm not getting controversial. I'm just saying, as a cisgender male, straight, I'm presuming. I don't know what you do, but I'm thinking. I'm getting the gist. I think it's we have a different bar of what is safe and what is not safe. And for me, it's just highly, highly concerning. And, I feel blessed to live. I'm like not on this microphone. I feel blessed to live in the bubble that is New York City, but I'm from North Carolina. And I just spent 3 weeks in North Carolina leading up to the election, and it was a very different thing. And I worry for the people of my community who live there, because I know I am blessed to live in this bubble, and not everyone is. So that's just...
I will say, I present pretty much as I am, but I will say that one of the greatest developments in America over the course of my career covering politics is you can say what you just said, both about me and about your concerns, pretty much anywhere in America, and you'll be accepted and applauded and appreciated. That's a huge change from 20, 30 years ago. And I'm not so naive as to think it could be absolutely anywhere, but no one in this room was uncomfortable with what you said. People in this room were concerned about what you said and concerned for you, but no one...
Because I present the way that I present?
Well, no, but we'll do another show next week, and we'll have someone come in, do the exact same thing. And
I'll shave my head.
yeah, present differently. Let's let Sean address it, but thank you again. Sean.
Yeah, so first of all, let me start with thank you for coming and sharing. I think that's the beautiful thing about this platform, this audience, why you guys, and so thank everybody for coming out tonight, first and foremost. And this is why what we've been able to do is so great, because we can have disagreements on policy and have a civil discussion, which is not where I think a lot of the country is all the time. So that's what's nice, aside from the chat with the Mark comments on. That's number one. Number two, on Project 2025, we've talked about this on the show. Both sides, meaning the think tanks on both sides, do this every cycle. And I guarantee you the Brookings Institute and the Center for American Progress probably both came up with things. We just sucked at branding theirs. and they did a really good job of branding it. This is what they do. They come up with a bunch of ideas every cycle and put it out there and say, hey, here's a bunch of things you could do, right? It's a bunch of authors on a bunch of subjects that put it through. Doesn't mean the administration's going to take it or not. Some of it they will, some of it they won't. So that's what you need to understand about Project 2025. That's the goal, and both sides do it to help their side be ready with policies. And it's a bunch of ideas. Sometimes you take part of it, sometimes you take it all, sometimes you take none of it. To Mark's point, if you look at who Donald Trump has associated with over the years, who he brought and associated with in his cabinet and in his staff last cycle, I think he has shown to be a fairly friendly guy when it comes to the LGBT community, more than any other Republican in my lifetime, at least. And at the end of the day, the last thing I'd say is, look, there's a difference between feeling comfortable, which is part of what we need, I think that's what you were asking about, right? And the bottom line is that there are policies that each side advocates for an election. There are things that Kamala Harris would have enacted that I would have found, horrible on a variety of things. But that's why we have elections. And so as much as I don't want you to ever feel unsafe in this country about policies, there are things that are going to happen to each of us, pro and con. And there are trainings that I have seen done in the government that I think are ridiculous. But at the end of the day, those are the consequences of an election, right? So they got to get all of the stuff that they wanted in last 4 years, and now the Republicans are going to be able to do, enact their policies. And if you find it horrible, then campaign against them and try to change it. But that's the beauty of the country. We won. We're going to enact policies that I think address the concerns that the voters that we appeal to need to get taken care of. Now, hopefully that is something that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable at the end of the day, but there's going to be policies that I think the pendulum is going to swing back a little the other way, especially on social and cultural issues.
I don't mind to be uncomfortable. I just want to be safe.
I get it, but and I think that's the difference, is that making sure that no one feels unsafe has got to be a priority of every American. But there's a difference between, I will say, as a conservative, I think that the pendulum swung way far the other way the last 4 years, where I started to feel uncomfortable about a lot of the stuff that I was forced to say or do or be canceled about. So it does, that's the beauty of the elections, is it swings. And I think it's going to swing back to a much more reasonable place as far as we see it.
While Sean hands the microphone to Dan, I will say that my biggest concern for your safety now is the number of people who are going to want to hug you from the two-way community tonight to express their support. So, Dan.
Well, there's a reason I kept, Sean, you were looking that way. I was like putting my hand out ready for the microphone. I talked about the party questioning kind of how it handles woke issues as something that is causing trouble. I can give you some really good news. There's no ambiguity on this issue for the Democratic Party. They will fight for gay rights tooth and nail. Like, I have goosebumps. Like, it fires me up that they're going to try to come after gay rights. Now, what they put in government documents about what you're supposed to say, or that, I think, to Sean's point, but on the macro issue of gay marriage, of healthcare protections, look, Trump won by this much in 2016. He lost by this much in 2016. He won by maybe this much in 2024. I think that if they truly try to go after gay rights on a macro level, they will lose in the midterms and they will lose in the general election of 2028. Because I believe that the majority of the country it's kind of a little libertarian. Like, what you do, who you're with, I think it's the same thing on marijuana. Like, kind of leave it alone. But I can tell you the Democratic Party will fight like hell on this issue. They will.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
I'll be lining up for hugs.
Well, and I'll just a little funny aside. I am married to my wife. We have it's a second marriage for both of us. We have 4 kids.
I'm married to my wife.
Yeah. No. I tell this story. I tell this because when I first joined the show, Mark gave me some advice. He's like, humanize yourself a little. Like, show them a little bit of your personality. So I was out with my wife on our first date night after I went on the show. And I said, hon, let's take a selfie. And I'm going to put up that we're on a date. You know, this is like Americana. And I put up the picture of the two of us. And I put the phone down, as one should when they're on a date with their wife, to eat dinner. And I pick it up. And there are all these texts from our kids, because 3 of them are on social media. They go, Dan, everyone thinks you're gay. And I was like, not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But I am not. But the number of people who were on X were like, you're straight? I was like, so.
It's the 32-inch waist that's the giveaway.
I will just say that the big difference, though, is that when my wife, who I'm married to as well, when I went out on date night, because someone had said when we got married that would keep our marriage going. They said, make sure you have date night. I didn't realize at the time that meant I had to go with her. And she got really mad because I said, yeah, tomorrow's date night. I'm really excited. All right, that's a joke.
Yeah.